Hello! Today we are comparing two handguns, the Glock 17 to the Canik P120. As you can see, there are full-size handguns, very comparable in length, definitely not in weight. The Glock is about 25 ounces, as the Canik is about 43 ounces. The takedown is easy on both handguns. And that will be it for the Glock. You can remove a few pins to take out most of the internal. Once you do it a couple of times, you will find it very easy to do. Done. For the Canik, it's not the same thing, but very similar. Easy enough to be done in a short time. For the inside, and like the Glock, after removing those pins a few times, you will find out that the inside is very easy to take apart. To rebuild, as easy as the Glock and most handguns. Done. Now, I understand that the weight and the made of those two handguns is very different. The Glock is a polymer frame with the striker fire, as the Canik is a steel handgun with a double action, single action hammer fire handgun. Nonetheless, they both shoot 9mm. One is probably easier to carry because it's lighter, but the weight can be an advantage and an inconvenience. The Glock is definitely better to carry day in, day out. It's lighter. The Canik is heavier, but remember 30 years ago, all we had to carry were revolver, full steel revolver, and full steel semi-automatic handguns like the 5906 Smith & Wesson or the 1911 Colt. And nobody really complained until now, when we get spoiled with a gun like the Glock or the Smith & Wesson M&P or the CZ P10, etc. I mean, so many handguns. A lot of variation in handguns, a lot of choices like never before. In the meantime, every manufacturer and every reviewer compare their newest gun with the Glock 19 or 17 because this is still the landmark. And one of them is a trigger. Now, the Glock has a very good trigger. Nonetheless, it's mushy. Why? Only because it is metal to polymer film. And here is a reset. Very short. It's still a good handgun. Short, and it's still a very good trigger. In 2016 and 2017, many manufacturers came with a superior handgun to the Glock. The Glock is still what we base every handgun on, because for 30 years, Glock has been the leader, but it's really falling behind, and the trigger is one area. The latest handgun is the Canik, his little brother here, the TP9, and all his brothers and cousins, has a much better trigger than the Glock for a lot less money. Now you also have the PPQ, you have the PP9, you have a lot of handguns that are better than the Glock. But still we are comparing to the Glock. And that's where the P120 is different. The P120 is a full steel handgun with a double action and single action hammer fired, which means the double action is a long pull and the trigger of a single action is very short and definitely much better than any polymer frame handgun. Then you also have the capability of a second strike. Let's say you are shooting and you don't have any detonation from your cartridge. Well, you can always pull the trigger again. And chances are, 50% chance, the cartridge will ignite and fire. These sights on both handguns were so-so. Everybody knows the Glock sights being plastic, that is extremely cheap from them. Adequate, but not very good. So everybody changed their sights. And on this Glock I have fiber front and fiber rear, which makes it a lot more accurate for shooting than OEM. And for the Canik, I install a full windage and elevation adjustable rear sight. The original OEM magazine release were not reachable by me. I had to move my hand to eject the magazine. I install an extended magazine release, and now as my hand is placed into a shooting position, I can eject the magazine. I had the same issue with the Canik. I couldn't reach the magazine release, so I install a CZ75 extended magazine release. Now my hand does not have to move to eject the magazine. The slide release or slide stop is really accessible on the Glock. I install an extended slide release on mine, but nonetheless is very accessible even with small hands. On the Canik OEM, much better than the CZ, where again I don't have to move my hand much and the slide is released. On the second part of this video, you are going to see a range shootout between those two handguns. During everyday carry, the Glock is much more comfortable because it's only 25 ounces, but during shooting, the Canik is superior because of its weight. And that will be seen during the range review. And finally, you will see which gun is better to carry and which gun is better to shoot. And I can tell you, to carry every day, the Glock is much better. And for the shootout, let's see what's coming up. This is the result of me shooting the Glock on a 4.5-inch target at 7 yards, 10 rounds, 9 on target, 1 flyer. This time I am shooting the Canik P120 still at 7 yards and still a 4.5-inch target, still slow shooting, 10 rounds but 10 on target. Here is the Glock 17 again with 10 rounds, but this time is 1 shot per second, and they all end up in the 6 inches radius. This time this is the Canik P120, still 10 rounds, 1 shot per second, and they all ended up within 5-inch radius. The Glock 17 again on this final test of fast shooting 10 rounds, 6 only ended up in the 5.5 inches radius. And finally, the Canik P120, again 10 rounds, fast shooting, but all 10 rounds ended up in the 5-inch radius. And to wrap it up, here are the final results. Now it's me shooting, but even so, I might be a mediocre or good or super good shooter. Is going to be the same for both guns. So here on the left is the Glock, and for the same thing you have the P120, and that was just for slow, accurate or trying to be accurate shots. Now I remind you, you also have a flyer here, but that does not count. Flyers never count. And then on the one shot per second, so it's a pom, 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 pom. Here is what we have. Now you can see the Canik versus the Glock. That's about the same, I would say. And finally, on very fast shooting, which is pum 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 pum. Well, first we only end up with 6 shots with this area, as with the Canik, all 10 shots were in this area. So an extra 4 shots within what 5 inches, compared to maybe 10 shots in 10 inches area. So overall, except for the weight difference, the Canik is definitely a better handgun. Till next time, see you guys.